At 12 years old, he was alone. No family. No money. No future. But hidden in that despair was a spark, a dream so bold, it would one day redefine luxury itself. This is the story of how an orphan boy, with nothing but grit and a vision, created Rolex. A brand so iconic, it's not just a watch, it's a symbol of success, precision, and timeless elegance. But how did he do it? What drove him to turn impossibility into legacy? And what can his journey teach us about overcoming the odds? This isn't just a story about a watch. It's a story about the power of believing in the unbelievable. Let's rewind to 1881. Hans Wilsdorf was born in Kulmbach, Germany. His childhood was far from easy. By the age of 12, both of his parents had passed away, leaving him an orphan. Imagine that, 12 years old, with no one to guide him, no safety net, and no clear path forward. Most people would have given up. But not Hans. He was sent to live with his uncle, who enrolled him in a boarding school. It was here that Hans began to develop a resilience that would define the rest of his life. He didn't let his circumstances break him. Instead, he used them as fuel. After finishing school, he moved to Switzerland, where he started working for a pearl export company. It was his first taste of the business world, and he was hooked. But here's something fascinating, even as a young man, Hans had a knack for languages. He was fluent in German, English, and French, which would later prove invaluable in building his global brand. Little did he know, his life was about to take a turn that would change everything. Now, let's fast forward to the early 1900s. Wristwatches were practically non-existent. Pocket watches were the norm, reliable, practical, but boring. Hans saw an opportunity. He believed that wristwatches could be more than just functional, they could be elegant, precise, and a statement of style. But there was a problem. At the time, wristwatches weren't very accurate. They were delicate, easily damaged by dust and moisture, and just not reliable enough for everyday use. Most people thought the idea of a wristwatch was ridiculous. But Hans? He saw potential. He thought, what if I could create a wristwatch that was not only stylish but also incredibly accurate and durable? And so, in 1905, at the age of just 24, Hans moved to London and started his own company. He didn't have much money, but he had something even more valuable, an idea, and the determination to make it happen. Now, here's where things get interesting. Hans didn't just want to create a watch, he wanted to create the best watch. He partnered with a Swiss watchmaking company called Egler, and together, they began developing a movement that was small, precise, and reliable enough for a wristwatch. But Hans didn't stop there. He knew that to stand out, his watches needed something extra, a name that was short, memorable, and easy to pronounce in any language. After experimenting with different combinations, he finally landed on the name Rolex. No one knows for sure how he came up with it, but some say it was inspired by the phrase horological excellence. Whatever the case, the name stuck. In 1910, Rolex made history by becoming the first wristwatch to receive the Swiss Certificate of Chronometric Precision. This was a huge deal. It proved that wristwatches could be just as accurate as pocket watches, if not more. And in 1926, Rolex took things even further with the invention of the Oyster case, the world's first waterproof wristwatch. But here's the kicker, Hans didn't just want people to hear about his watches, he wanted them to see how amazing they were. So, in 1927, he pulled off one of the most brilliant marketing stunts of all time. He gave a Rolex Oyster to a young swimmer named Mercedes Glaetze, who was attempting to swim across the English Channel. After 10 hours in the water, the watch was still ticking perfectly. The story made headlines, and Rolex became synonymous with durability and precision. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Rolex continued to innovate. In 1931, they introduced the perpetual rotor, a self-winding mechanism that revolutionized the watch industry. This invention meant that Rolex watches no longer needed to be manually wound, they could power themselves simply through the motion of the wearer's wrist. But Hans wasn't done yet. He wanted Rolex to be more than just a watch, he wanted it to be a tool for adventurers, explorers, and pioneers. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first climbers to reach the summit of Mount Everest. And guess what was on their wrists? A Rolex Oyster Perpetual. In 1960, Rolex made history again when the Bathyscaphe-Trieste submarine descended to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in the ocean. Attached to the submarine was a specially designed Rolex watch, which survived the crushing pressure and emerged still ticking. These feats weren't just marketing. They were proof of Rolex's unparalleled durability and precision. Hans Wilsdorf didn't just create a watch, he created a legacy. Over the years, Rolex became more than just a brand, it became a symbol of success, ambition, and timeless elegance. From explorers climbing Mount Everest to divers exploring the ocean depths, Rolex watches were there, proving their reliability time and time again. But here's what's truly inspiring: Hans never forgot where he came from. Despite his success, he remained humble and dedicated to his craft. He poured his heart and soul into every watch, ensuring that each one lived up to the Rolex name. And when he passed away in 1960, he left behind a company that continues to thrive to this day. Think about it, a boy who started with nothing, who faced unimaginable challenges, went on to create one of the most iconic brands in the world. If that's not a testament to the power of vision, determination, and hard work, I don't know what is. So, what can we learn from Hans Wilsdorf's story? First, your past doesn't define your future. Hans could have let his early struggles hold him back, but instead, he used them as motivation to create something extraordinary. Second, believe in your vision, even when others don't. When Hans first introduced the idea of a wristwatch, people thought he was crazy. But he didn't let that stop him. He knew what he wanted, and he went after it with everything he had. And finally, quality matters. Hans didn't cut corners or settle for good enough. He was obsessed with creating the best possible product, and that's why Rolex is still a leader in the watch industry today. So, the next time you see a Rolex, remember the story behind it. It's not just a watch, it's a reminder that no matter where you start, you have the power to create something incredible. If you enjoyed this video and found Hans Wilsdorf's story as inspiring as I did, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a little motivation today. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more stories of resilience, innovation, and success. Because at the end of the day, it's not about where you start, it's about where you're willing to go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.